Kazakhstan's largest city, Almaty, tells state media that dozens of protesters have been killed in what they call an attempt to storm administrative buildings and police stations. Explosions and apparent gunshots were also heard in the city's main square, where reporters say hundreds had gathered to protest against the government. Kazakhstan's president has asked for help, and Russia will lead an alliance of former Soviet states in dispatching what they call peacekeeping forces to help quell the unrest. The protests were triggered by surging fuel prices.
Night falls, and the unrest in Almaty intensifies further. What began as a protest against fuel prices has quickly spiraled out of control. Local media reports that several security personnel have died, while flights in and out of Almaty have been cancelled. The president has confirmed that protesters stormed the airport earlier on Wednesday. The protests originally began over the weekend in the remote oil hub of Zhanozhen. But after the government announced an end to price caps on fuel, the unrest quickly spread to other cities. Now, a nationwide state of emergency is in place. In Almaty, police have been deployed to curb the unrest. But tear gas and stun grenades have done little to dissuade the crowds. Neither have hundreds of arrests, nor the imposition of a curfew and movement restrictions in several regions. Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev said he would reinstate price controls. But by now, protesters are calling for political change beyond the price of fuel. In a surprise move, President Tokayev also sacked the government and took control of the State Security Committee, ousting former president and longtime ruler Nursultan Nazarbayev. Now, with Tokayev solely at the helm, he has called in the military. And he says no matter what, he will stay in the capital. As the head of state and from today, the president of the Security Council, I intend to act as tough as possible. Kazakhstan's authoritarian government usually tolerates little real opposition. But this time, the protesters' anger seems to have caught the authorities off guard.
Well, joining me now is journalist Bruce Panier, a Central Asia specialist. He's following the story for us from Prague. Bruce, the internet has been shut down in Kazakhstan now. What is the latest that you're hearing from your sources on the ground there?
Well, there seemed to be some partial restoration of the internet last night, late. I don't know if they've tried to block it out again. You know, you mentioned that Russia agreed that they were going to send some troops over there to help out, and there is what they're calling in Kazakhstan a counter-terrorism operation underway in Almaty at the moment. So I'm sure that the internet is down in Almaty, and there's probably a blackout in some of the other nearby regions too, some of the big cities as well. So it's been hard to get information for days out there, and until they get to the point where they think they've restored order in Almaty, I would imagine it would be very difficult to connect.
Well, the size of the protest, it does come as a surprise, really. How could a small uprising against fuel prices get this serious? What's the background to all this?
Well, there's been simmering tensions out there for quite some time. I mean, there's a huge disparity in wealth in that country. People connected to the former president, Nursultan Nazarbayev, and his family members have done very well. I mean, some of them are billionaires. They own, luxurious properties in Europe, for instance, in the Middle East. Whereas the average person is getting by on, a couple $100s a month, and sometimes, in some cases, even less than that. There's been problems with social benefits over the years, working conditions. So there's really a whole bowl full of problems that have come up in the last few years, and this fuel price hike just was the catalyst, to set off the whole, for everyone to vent their frustrations for many, many years. And I should mention also, of course, that Tokayev came in after Nazarbayev resigned in March 2019. There were expectations on the part of many people that this was going to be a new era in Kazakhstan, but it never materialized. The government continued to operate exactly as it did. There were no opposition parties registered. No real reforms were implemented in the country. So people just, like I said, got frustrated that after nearly 3 years, really nothing had changed except who was the president of the country.
Well, the so-called Collective Security Treaty Organization will send peacekeepers now to Kazakhstan at the country's request. Does that mean that Russian troops will crack down on the protesters?
Well, it's interesting. Crackdown might not be exactly the right word. Kazakh forces seem to be already working. And, I want to make clear, too, that as far as I've been able to tell, this is only happening in Almaty. Kazakhstan's a very big country. The appearance of Russian forces on the streets of Almaty will bring back horrible memories from the Soviet era, without a doubt, but it might be enough to help restore calm in that area. But there's a lot of problems they're going to face for this in the future. People in Kazakhstan will not be happy that Tokayev had to resort to calling in, the CSTO to help him out. And he's framed this all of a sudden last night as being the work of a band of terrorists who were trained outside the country, and there was absolutely no evidence that that's the case. This appears to be purely a popular uprising, and it's sort of ridiculous if you look at the pictures of some of these protesters. They're oil workers, women, people like that. How these got to be a band of terrorists who were trained outside the country, I have no idea, but he used that as the pretext to call in the CSTO. He's going to pay a price for that for, days, months, years to come, probably.